Hey guys, Manitove here again. This time I'm going to be going over the balance patch notes that were just recently released from Com2uS. So let's go ahead and I'll give you my take on how I feel the balancing is going and let you know how I feel. So let's go ahead and dive right in. All right. As I said, Com2uS just released these notes, I believe a day or two ago, and I just wanted to go over and like I said, give my reaction on what they're balancing and the improvements that they're making. Because I think a lot of people might be underestimating some of the balancing that's happening. I think some of these modifications are really good. So we'll go ahead and dive right in and look at the Dark Ifrit first. For his passive, Conversion of Magic. Currently, he heals himself 3% for each harmful effect removed, and they're changing it to all allies will now receive that same benefit. I think that's a stellar buff for Veramos. Makes him very usable. I see him now as a solid, solid light paladin counter. And the reason for this is everyone's like, oh, 3% is not much. It's per harmful effect removed by Veramos. If you have 4 units on there, that's a 12% heal in Arena or RTA. And if in Siege, 9% heal because you only got 3 possible cleanses. I don't think that's nothing to be overlooked. It's pretty strong, especially if you happen to have built your Veramos on Violent and you have more than 2 stacks of a debuff on you that are not freeze or stun. You're going to garner some more supplemental healing or sustain. So that's a pretty good buff. The next one is the Water Occult Girl, Water Guardian Angel. They added an effect where it decreases attack speed for 2 turns with a 40% chance. Now, Water Guardian Angel attacks 3 times and already has a 3-turn defense break on it. And its skill 2 already has a cleanse and a heal. So me personally, I don't like this. I think it's giving too much power to the unit. But apparently some Anavel users out there were complaining that it was underpowered in certain elements of the game. I'm going to assume more so for RTA. Yeah, not really excited about that buff. I'm a little disappointed that they're improving upon an already decent unit. It's a really good unit, actually, so I don't think it needed a buff. The Fire Guardian Angel, for the fire element, they are changing it from a 2-turn dot to a 3-turn dot. It seems like a minor change, but it actually makes it adds an additional 10% of damage, or 15% depending on how many dots you land. So, viable buff. I really don't see that affecting PvE players too much, because if you use it in PvE like Trial of Ascension or the Hall of Heroes, most of the time if you're running a dot comp, it's not lasting more than 2 turns anyways. So this is more for a PvP aspect to make it more of a threat, which we'll see how it plays out. But with all the cleansers out there in the meta, I don't see that being too much of a big deal. The biggest threat it provides is it has 2 AoE skills, and if you run it on Despair, the stuns are a lot more viable. Wind Occult Girl is getting an added effect where it's going to increase the attack bar of the allies by 20%. That is pretty strong. The skill 3 already reduces the enemy's attack bar per hit. So you're seeing that added on. You're going to see anywhere between 20 to 40% attack bar swing just from the skill. I think it's pretty strong. I think it's going to make her more meta relevant, and you might see more Charlotte in RTA, and even maybe during Arena Rush for some of those people that like to use Charlotte, because the name of the game is attack bar manipulation, and this will provide a lot more of it now. Pretty good skill enhancement. The Light Occult Girl I used to get a 3-turn attack power break with a 40% chance. Now it's getting a removes 1 beneficial effect with a 50% chance. That's pretty strong. Now if that's per hit, basically you're going to have a 150% chance to strip a buff, or three chances at 50% to remove a buff. So I think that's pretty good. Makes her very much usable. I think a lot of the light occult girl owners will. We're going to start seeing them, especially probably in siege defenses, because that can really mess up tuning or a buff reliant team. The next two aren't all that great. The Light and the Dark Dragon. Armageddon is getting a damage increase of 10%. I mean, that's a substantial jump in damage, but I don't think it's going to be enough to make it a meta-relevant unit. They still need to add a little bit more. We'll see how it plays out, though, but I don't think that's going to change its viability very much. The stun rate on the Dark Dragon, they're adding 10% to that as well. Really don't see anyone trying to run a stun comp with the Dark Dragon. But once again, not a lot of people have these two units, so it's already rare to see them. So we'll see how it gets implemented. The Dark Vampire Lord. This is a super nice buff. Instead of 2 turns for its vampire and attack power buff, it's going up to 3 turns. It's on a 4-turn cooldown. 1 Vile proc, and if you have them on violence, basically you have a 6-turn uptime for attack power and the vampire buff, which is great for PvE elements. I've seen a lot of people have shifted to using this guy in the Rift dungeons, the elemental beasts, because he has a decent leader skill, and if you're using units that deal additional damage like Brandia or Argon or the Fire Homunculus per stacked debuff, he brings already a lot more utility because his second skill applies 3 debuffs. So I think we're going to see more Pernas drop out of the leaderboards and more Dark Vampire Lords pop up there now that this attack buff is 3 turns. It's a good buff. The Vampire Lord second skill, both in its unawakened and awakened form, getting an 8% increase in damage, will make him once again more usable. The standard vampire variants, Water, Wind, and Dark, are also getting an 8% increase to their weaken ability. Now, the reason why they're not as viable for that particular setup that I just mentioned is there is 2 different versions of weaken. The Dark Vampire Lord hits 3 times. The other variants only hit once, but they apply the same debuffs. So it's just how you want to use it, or what's your preference. I actually use Argon for the Water Rift, and I toy around with him in the Dark Rift. He's not a bad unit. He's worth a build because of that third skill that does incrementally more damage per debuff on the enemy unit. The natural 5-star vampire, Feast of Blood. Whenever you kill an enemy, you add 30% attack bar to all your allies. Is being modified to absorb the attack bar of the enemy by 15% with an attack. Now, there was a lot of people that were complaining that the free-to-play version of the Dark Vampire Lord outclassed Cadiz. I didn't think it really did. And I mean, the stats show, or you talk to most players, the Dark Vampire Lord was a storage guardian. And Cadiz owners were still finding uses for Cadiz because his passive does branding and whatnot. But I think that this buff is going to make him a lot more viable in certain aspects of the game, especially RTA. And I've heard some people say that they're not too impressed with it, but what I see essentially is they've taken Lauren's skill set and put it on the Dark Vampire Lord. The Dark Vampire Lord already applies branding with his with any attack, and now with any attack he's also going to reduce the attack bar by 15% each time. His first skill attacks for 2 hits, so you're getting a 30% attack bar reduction with skill 1. So I think that's a very viable buff. I think it's going to make him a lot more relevant, and there might be screams to nerf him after the next RTA round passes. I think he's going to be more prevalent, and a lot more people are going to use him, especially in tandem with Lauren. 2 units that provide that kind of attack bar manipulation on the same team. Yeah, that's going to be pretty overpowering. The next one is probably the one I'm most excited about, and that is the Dragon Knight buffs. Justice, the Justice Dragon Knights, the water, fire, and light. Added effect ignores all damage reduction effects. Some people were saying in chat that I saw that this was pretty underwhelming to them. This is an amazing buff. I don't think it's underwhelming at all. I actually think it will shift the way people look at the Dragon Knights, especially the water and fire variants, because more people have access to them. I'm a Leica user. I'm a heavy Leica user, and the biggest issue I had over the past year and a half or 2 years after they took away his revenge stun was handling certain water units, because they've been buffed and made more relevant, say like the Water Monkey King. And you put the Water Monkey King on Violent. Both his second and third skill are on 3-turn cooldowns after max Devilmoning. So just the ability to turn cycle, get a Vile proc, and he would basically melt Leica's away. And would always have invincibility up after using S3, which invincibility and immunity, so there wasn't much you can do. Leica now is not a direct counter, in my opinion, to Water Monkey, but it makes it more viable when someone picks Water Monkey into your Leica if you're doing RTA, or if you see one on Guild War defense or Siege defense, you can actually still take a Leica into it now, because if he pops that skill 3, puts up that invincibility and that immunity, Leica is going to go right through that shield with that Justice. And if it's not a speed HP crit damage variant, it's probably going to die, because the multipliers on Leica's Justice are just insane. Heavy hitting single target damage dealer. So I am really excited for this buff. I think it makes Chow a lot more viable as well. Just because the ignore damage reduction effects. You would have people trying to just outspeed you on defenses with Chloe. You go right through the shield. Wusa, who I know has fallen out of the meta relevancy for RTA, but occasionally you still see them because of the high base speed and the ability to shield and will. You go right through the shield. So it provides a new way to circumvent some of the more meta relevant things that you're seeing, and I think people downplaying the importance of the ignore damage reduction effects will be, I think people will start to see the light as the season goes on about how big of a modification that is. Which takes me into the Light Dragon Knight, who they have continuously reworked over the past few patches. They even pulled a rework out of the last patch because everyone was up in arms about how long it was going to take to stack, because the Light Dragon Knight is not Leica, and that is the problem that most of the Dragon Knights have, is they are very susceptible to being one-shot. They're an attack type unit, they're not support units, so they're not supposed to be standing there for 20 turns to build up a passive to become viable. And it seems like they addressed that head on with this patch, and they changed his passive to gains immunity to inability effects, which he already had, increases the attack power by 50% each time your allies are attacked or granted with harmful effects. And that's a key in the wording. are attacked or are granted with harmful effects. So even some units that apply debuffs without attacking still proc his passive. And I think they double stack, so if he's attacked and gets a beneficial effect, you get 2 stacks from that. Now this can stack up to 5 times. So that's a 250% increase to the attack power in 5 stacks. In addition, he now counter attacks with a 30% chance when you get attacked. So the old method to handling Jaeger was, oh, he has a Jaeger, kill it first. And now they're going to punish you if you target it, and punish you by proxy if you target one of the allies. So they're trying to make it either way, you got to pick your poison, which is nice. It gives him a lot more viability and gives a lot more of a reason to be fearful of Jaeger. I think it's going to be a good unit. I don't think it's going to be game changing, but it does make it a lot more viable, and it will be pickable and usable in certain elements of the game, especially if you're going into like Guild Wars Siege against dark units on defense, and then you can abuse the AI to gain maximum advantage out of him. The Water Oracle, skill 3 Daydream, now has a 50% chance to put all enemies to sleep for 1 turn. I'm not too sure how I feel about that. I don't have a Praha, so I don't get to use one very often. I think the heal is amazing. 70% heal AoE. It's pretty stellar. More chance for CC is pretty awesome, but if you're going to have to find the right comps that it works with. Because if you're putting it in there with a daughter and there's dots up, dots are going to break your CC. And I can't wait to see how people start to use it. But anytime you get more CC, it just looks like a certain Guild War defenses are going to get a little bit more annoying. The next one is the Polar Queen's Fire and Light Aura of Dawn. Their damage is being increased by 18%. Okay, extra damage, nice. The Water Chimera, disappointing buff, only increasing the damage by 18% for Crush, which I believe is the AoE. Skill 3. Not all that impressive. I don't think that changes anything for the Water Chimera. Doesn't make him any more relevant. I think he has a single target freeze and then does AoE damage. He's still just going to be relegated to a PvE monster. For being a Squall type, with his S2, I think that's what he has on his S2. Lagmaron is still more viable. Lagmaron has an AoE stun, AoE attack break, so I don't see a lot more play coming out of him. Monkey King Fire, the Golden Headband, is going to increase the resistance by 5%. It can stack up to 10 times, so that gives him a 50% bonus to his resistance over time. A lot of people complaining that he's very easily, even though he can't be CC'd, he can still be controlled via Lauren, Varad. Might not be able to freeze him, but you can reset his attack bar. With the turn cycling going on, just if you brought him in an RTA, he was never moving, even though he wasn't able to be stunned or frozen. So they're trying to give a minor buff. I don't buy into the accuracy or the resistance lie of Summoner's War. I've seen units that have 0% accuracy stun 5 consecutive times, and I've seen units with 100% accuracy miss their debuffs every turn. So we'll see how it plays out, see if it makes him a little bit more viable in the RTA meta. I still don't see a lot of people picking him. He's got a small role to play in RTA where he is a solid counter pick, and I think he'll still be relegated to that role. The next one that I am really excited about is the Dryad buff. In one of my first videos that I released, I did a review of the Water Dryad Hearn. I really like the unit. I'm really excited for the buff. All of the Dryads that have the skill 2 Honeybee Friends, Water, Fire, and Light, their healing ability is being increased by 10%, which is great. The heal was a little lackluster, so I hope this improves it and makes it more viable. The Tree of Loss for the water, the Oblivion state is being increased to 3 turns from 2 turns, which is amazing. The only unit in the game, I believe, that has a 3-turn Oblivion, even though it is single target, still fits its role very well and allows for Oblivion to stay on longer, even with a turn cycling meta that you see in certain comps. This still allows you to set up your combo. Like, I use it particularly against Garros, and sometimes it's able to move twice before I'm able to break the CC that was placed on my team via Orion or even Garo himself with a skill 2 stun. So this way it makes it a little bit more viable for that, and I can't wait for the patch to drop just so I can start tuning my comps to benefit from this. I do have an alt account that I occasionally play on. It does have the Light Dryad as well. I'm really excited about this buff. The shield and recovery amount is being changed from 10% to 15% on its passive. This passive is really strong. I think it really gets overlooked on how good it is. It produces a shield based on 10% of the Light Dryad's HP every turn, and now it'll be 15%. So if you can stack high HP, you get a free 6,000 to 7,500 HP shield now every turn, which is pretty nice. And if an ally has a debuff, it doesn't shield them, rather it heals them. So it's going to be healing it by 15% now every turn. I think that's a real solid buff. I think makes the Light Dryad more viable in certain aspects, even on defense in a siege. I can't wait to see how people start using that particular unit. The Wind Sniper, very lackluster unit. Added effect to his veteran passive. When the enemy's attack lands as a glancing hit, it increases his attack bar by 30%. It is now being increased to 50%, and he's getting attack power for 1 turn. Now, when he goes into the skill 2, it puts him in a pose that increases the chance that a glancing hit will land on him. So, I see it being beneficial. I don't see it being game breaking for him. I don't think it's going to improve his usability at all. All the snipers are attack type units, therefore relatively squishy. So you're going to have to build a comp to go around it to make sure it survives for it to be usable. And I just don't see people investing that much time into the wind unit, which still doesn't seem like it's overly great, even though it can self-attack power buff for 1 turn. All the snipers with hidden aim, which is the fire, wind, and dark, when they go into their stance, the next time they attack, they get a 200% damage increase. Now, this was being triggered on revenges beforehand, and now it's not. It will allow them to stay in their stance. If they revenge, if you have them on a revenge build, you get that 200% increase to the revenge, and then get that 200% again when they attack on their turn. Once again, that's a pretty nice buff. Like I said, it makes them a little bit more viable. I think the one that's going to benefit the most from this is probably going to be the light one, because it seems to have a better overall kit in utilization. The wind one still suffers from being wind, and it has a lot of better wind counterparts that do its job better than it can. Alright. And then the water and light one, suppressive fire, damage is increased by 11%. They already get a damage increase when they strip. They get a percentage damage increase per stripped beneficial effect on top of the damage that they already do, and now it's being upped by 11%. I'm a big fan of the water one. If you guys have seen my after action reviews, I use the water one all the time. It's an amazing unit. So this is just going to increase its usability. It's just a damage increase. I'll take it. Anytime you want to add more damage, I'm good to go. The Dark Sylph, Nightfall. This is the skill 3. It puts everyone to sleep, and now it will also block beneficial effects for 2 turns. I think this is going to be a pretty awesome unit. I already liked the unit beforehand. I don't have it personally, would love to have it. That 2-turn sleep is amazing. AoE. It's like a little mini Hathor, which I also don't have. But now that it blocks beneficial effects as well, you could turn 1 Tiana, turn 2 sleep, and block beneficial effects. And if Fran procs out of the sleep somehow, you're still not going to see her put up immunity. I think it's amazing. I can't wait to see how many. I think this unit will be used a lot more in lieu of Hathor. For non-Hathor owners anyways. I think you might see a little bit of a shift in people using it. It has a pretty decent base speed. So, and I believe it's skill 2 has a full attack bar, single target reduction, and increases its own attack bar by 50% after using the skill. So this unit brought a lot more viability. The Windharg. Now this one is one that I'm waiting to see how it's implemented, because the way I'm reading it has an added effect to its skill 3, Deer Song. Grants immunity on allies with no harmful effects to be removed for 2 turns. Now there's 2 ways they can go with this. The way I'm reading it, the skill 3 says it cleanses and grants a shield. So if it's cleansed, it means when you use this, they're not going to have harmful effects on them, which means they should get immunity for 2 turns. Or it could be that once it's the checks have gone through, if harmful effects removed, they won't get the buff. I think that he's going to be a little mini Wusa. That's the way I'm reading it. A defense-based Wusa instead of an HP-based. So I think that this unit will probably be seeing a lot more action in Guild Siege and on some Guild War offenses. It's a decent unit for R5 already. I don't see anyone really rushing out the door to go build him for that particular reason anymore, especially with the BJR5. But I'm really excited for this unit because I would like anything that has a cleanse and an immunity. It's worth, mini Velajul and a better version of a Wusa in some aspects, because Wusa does not cleanse, and he provides a shield and immunity for 2 turns. Death Knight buffs. The Wind Death Knight. The res is being reduced by 1 turn. I assume that's just for some more viability in Labyrinth, because some people do use him on auto Labyrinth teams. I'm pretty sure some mid-level players still use him on their auto TOA teams as well. So just more PvE viability for the Wind Death Knight. Fire, Wind, and Light Deadly Wave is being decreased by 1 turn as well. So instead of 4 turns, 3 turns. That's a pretty decent buff. More AoE damage. Still doesn't fix the issue with 2 of the 3 of those. Or I should say just the light one, because the light one's sort of a weird build kit. Remnants from when Summoner's War first came out. It's an attack type monster that his second skill does damage proportionate to his HP. You're not going to build the light Death Knight on an HP build. It's an attack type unit, especially because the skill 3 requires a kill to do something. So you want attack, crit damage, attack. And then we'll move into the Beast Hunters. I haven't built any of them yet. They're not an impressive family to me. Some people were using, I believe, the Wind one for the Water Rift for the debuffs, but it looks like that's being changed a little bit. Wind, Water, and Dark aim head. Use 2 defense break for 2 turns, but it's now changing to inflicted damage increases by 15% per harmful effect. So I think they're just trying to get more free-to-play versions of Brandia out there, or Crow, which I guess is taking people a while to 2A. I don't really see a reason for this other than trying to help people out in Rifts a little bit. The water, Master of Hunting, added effect, weakens the enemy's defense for 1 turn if you attack the enemy with no beneficial effects. So if they have no beneficial effects and you hit them, they get defense broken. Fire, Hawkeye's passive, it's increasing the passive activation chance. I thought it was 10% per turn. Now I guess it's going up to 15% per turn for every harmful effect granted on the target. Oh, okay. Basically, they're just increasing the chance that you're going to ignore the defense. Dark, Desperate Arrow, increasing damage by 12%. Damage increase, not much to talk about. The Wind one is getting the biggest change. Before, it would attack the enemy with an arrow that can't be removed and weakens the defense, blocks beneficial effects, and disturbs HP. That's the one everyone was using for the Water Rift, for the bonus damage for damage scaling units based off of debuffs. Now it's changing it to an arrow, removing all beneficial effects and weakening the defense for 2 turns, increasing the chance of landing in glass. So it's putting on break defense and glancing with a 90% chance. In addition, increases your attack bar by 50% if you land with a critical hit. So they're removing a debuff, changing the debuffs a little bit. Probably see him used less, and I mean most people have already stopped using him, I believe, so I don't think you'll see much of a change at all. And then the light one, Silver Light, is getting a damage increase by 20%. Once again, just a damage increase. 20% is a fair amount, so he might become a more viable damage dealer. Not really too familiar with them. And honestly, don't see very many people using them. Maybe that'll change. Alright, the Dark Dragon, his Awakening effect is being modified. It used to be 25% resistance, now he's getting 15% in the crit, which makes more sense. He's a cleave monster. You want him to crit, so having 15% extra crit rate gonna lower the rune requirements you're gonna need to build the unit in the first place. The Dark Vampire used to awaken into crit rate by 15%, but now it's being changed to strengthen the skill, and that is Vampire Bat. In addition to already absorbing attack bar, will now remove a beneficial effect on the enemy with a 50% chance. Okay. Cadiz is going to be everywhere. It's going to be a better version of Lauren. It now has a strip on skill 1 with 2 chances. Removes a beneficial of the effect with a 50% chance, and he attacks twice. So basically 100% chance once, or 2 50% chances to strip a skill, and then he's going to attack bar manipulate and reduce it by up to 30%, or if they have will, 15%. Because first turn strip, second hit attack bar reduction. So Cadiz is going to, I think Cadiz is going to be very usable. We'll see him in a lot of different spots. The Dark Sylph leader skill modification. He used to increase the attack speed of all ally monsters by 24% in dungeons, and now it's just going to be a universal 19%. I think the light one already does that, so we're just getting another free-to-play, or not free-to-play, but another leader, speed leader, if you are lucky enough to pull it. Almost said free-to-play because the light one was a Hall of Heroes, and so far they have refrained from dropping the dark one in the HOH, which I've been hoping for a while, because like I said, it's a very nice unit, especially if you don't have a Hathor. Skill error resolutions, didn't know that these were errors. Fixed an issue of the HP recovery amount not being calculated properly on Lulu, and that the Light Dryad would skip its own turn because if it's passive would proc. and they're improving the AI on the Windharg because of its new skill set, which means on auto or defense it should prioritize using skill 3 first. But if you checked out my most recent previous video, Can You Trust the AI in Summoner's War, you know it's probably not going to work as designed anyways. So that is my video. I hope I shed some light on some things. Hopefully got you thinking about some things that you may have overlooked or may have undervalued in this patch. I think it's a pretty exciting patch. I'm really excited for it, actually. Can't wait for it to drop over here in the next couple of days. Probably going to hit Wednesday night, because not too often do we see a patch drop in which they do balancing during an active siege. So I look forward to seeing you guys all in the next video. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit follow, comment below if you saw anything I might have missed, or if you have any ideas on anything that I overlooked, or maybe I just misinterpreted a changed skill. Let me know what you think. You guys have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.